Welcome back to She Can, where we interview role models who lead by example. And we are super excited to have Anna Gifty today. Anna, welcome to She Can. You are an incredible
Thank
role model. We're
you.
so excited to have you. You're a Ghanaian-American activist, award-winning researcher, and writer. And your newest book, The Double Tax: How Women of Color Are Overcharged and Underpaid, is out. It's very exciting. You've done lots of interviews. We're excited to have you, Anna. You have incredible reviews. Gabriel Union says it's bold, unflinching, and revolutionary. Chelsea Clinton says every woman needs to read this book. You are also the author
Mhm.
of The Black Agenda, Bold Solutions for a Broken System. You've studied at Harvard, public policy and economics. You're the founder of the Sadie Collective. You're Forbes 30 under 30. I think we should start talking about the book. Then we're going to talk about how you got to where you are today. And then we're going to try and get to know you a little better, Anna. So, first of all, congratulations to this incredible book. We're so excited this is out in the world. It's a must read, and it's a must read for many different reasons that you will explain to us now how you structured it, the information in it. So, talk to us about the double text. What do you mean with that? How have you structured the book, and what do you want readers to know?
Yes, so first and foremost, thank you so much for having me here, Stephanie. I am so honored. It's crazy to hear those things back. I don't like hearing my bio. It's just very like overwhelming to see that those are things that are part of my journey because a lot of times you're just kind of going through the motions. And so
Yeah.
thank you so much for that kind introduction. So hi everybody, my name is Anna. Super excited to be here. This is the double tax. So the double tax is essentially the compounded cost of racism and sexism. And I think a lot of times when we talk about these topics, they're often talked about in isolation. I think Black women have done a great job of sort of champion intersectionality. I know folks are familiar with Kimberly Crenshaw, the Combahee River Collective. So there's a lot of leading Black women who sort of paved the way for a book like this to exist. But I think what we don't really understand, at least through an economic lens, is how these sort of intersecting identities cost women and why this is sort of a really great lens to think about inequality both in the United States and also globally. So,
Yeah.
one thing that I really love about this book is that we incorporate a lot of international statistics. So, statistics from different parts of Europe, parts of Asia, et cetera, to really kind of better understand how this is sort of manifesting in our day to day. And so,
Mhm.
in the book, I kind of structure it as sort of the lifetime cost that women are facing. And I argue that, for women, especially women of color, and I would say even more particular Black women, these individual costs that we're dealing with because of the double tax actually, if left unaddressed, become societal costs. So if we're not able to sort of reduce the cost of childcare, for example, for women, especially women of color, we actually stand to lose a lot more because these women end up getting burdened with those costs and are unable to really support their families in other ways that they might need, right? In terms of that same sort of lens of caregiving, like these same women might be taking care of their parents in a couple years. And so if their money is going all to childcare, they actually might not have money to take care of people who are aging and transitioning in life. And so this is sort of the premise of the book, why I'm really excited that it's out in the world. And I'm hoping that it has a very long life, meaning that this is just the beginning of our conversation, but hopefully we'll be talking about this for years to come.
Anna, so tell us a little bit what your main insights are in trying to shed a light on the facts, right? The facts and the data that underpins a strategy for change. So, what can we all do to reduce that cost? And what are those facts that underpin a strategy?
Yeah, so let me maybe highlight a couple different statistics because there's quite a few statistics in this book. I think we have like over 250 citations. So
Wow.
I can't name every number that's in this book, but I really encourage you guys to check the book out. I'm going to highlight a couple things. So let's talk about beauty for a second. One thing that people don't know is that, at least in the US, and I imagine this might be also true in the UK, amongst leading hair brands, think about your Pantene, your sort of I'm trying to think of another leading hair brand that comes to mind, Garnier, right? the types of shampoo and conditioner products that are advertised to women of color, especially Black women, as compared to white women and maybe women who have maybe finer hair textures, is upcharged by about 20 cents per ounce. So I don't know if folks know this, but like your shampoo or conditioner bottle is probably around 17 ounces. So those cents differences can actually become differences of dollars over time, right? And so what I find is that if we're just thinking about like the amount of shampoo and conditioner that you might be purchasing over the course of, a given year or something like that, you may be spending upwards of, $637 more as a Black woman or a woman of color on just shampoo and conditioner as compared to your white woman counterparts. And then I want to add here that this is like the double tax is really like the pink tax and then some, right? So we still know that women in general are upcharged for shampoo and conditioner products. So just imagine that, you're dealing with the pink tax in one sense, and then, given this other identity sort of dimension, you're also dealing with this additional tax on top of that pink tax. So that's what the double tax ultimately is. I think another stat that I really want to highlight here as well, again, it's still US based, but I think it speaks to more of a global trend happening in Western societies, is that in the United States, I don't know if folks know this, for every dollar of wealth that a white man has, white women have 78 cents,
Yeah.
right? A huge decrease, a huge decrease.
Yeah.
I want you to guess, Stephanie, how much you think Latina women have for every dollar of wealth. It's still in the cents. I'll just give you a hint.
Yeah, yeah, I know. It's a lot less, and Black women is a lot less again.
A lot
Um,
less.
and I don't know that particular statistic, but I know the statistic when we're talking about investing in women, right? We get
Right.
a tiny amount of VC capital. It's like 2 or 3%, and Black women
Yes,
get 0.3, I think. So those
that's right. I think like
differences are
7%
massive. I
across.
mean, it's
That's right.
negligible.
It's real. You got it. And so maybe just to address the point we were talking about before, for Latina women, it's 14 cents. For Black women, it's 8 cents.
Wow.
Right? So the thing about the double tax is that it's not happening in isolation.
Mm,
So I'm still a mother that has to deal with the cost of childcare. I'm still a caregiver that has to deal with the cost of caregiving. And then I have no wealth to pull from because I don't have any wealth to begin with, right? And I don't have parents or loved ones who also don't have wealth because they also face the double tax. So it's generational. So that's another stat that I want to highlight. And then maybe the last one I'll highlight that radicalized me is me learning about how much it actually costs to have a baby in the United States,
mm.
especially when it comes to C-sections. So on average, C-sections without health insurance, and by the way, I don't know if folks have been following politics, that might become a reality for millions of people in the next like couple months, right?
Yeah.
Without health insurance, you're paying upwards of $24,000 on average to just have the baby with a C-section. And Black women are more likely than white women to have unplanned C-sections. What that means is you get to the delivery room, you're thinking you're going to have a birth that is not a C-section, and then the doctor comes in and says, because of blah, blah, blah complications, we're going to have to cut your stomach open. Now this is like you can't even do the benefits and the cost and benefit analysis there because you just have to have the baby as safely as possible.
Yeah.
And then you don't know what kind of complications might follow while you're in the delivery room. I don't know if folks know this, but like in the United States, they charge you for like staying an extra day. They charge your baby too, right? So it's like you're getting charged on a number of different things on top of that average amount that I just said. And so folks might leave the hospital with a bill of about $50,000. And unless you have insurance to really cover a substantial aspect of that or amount of that, you could go into medical debt for having a child. So these are some of the stats that are highlighted throughout the book that for me, I kind of address this book to my three nieces. I say, look, this is what you need to look out for. And so when we talk about solutions, a lot of it is happening at the individual sort of community level, and then at the, I would say, sort of the level of state, government, that sort of thing. And maybe let me talk really quickly about these three things as sort of different actions of what I just mentioned. At the individual level, you can go to your local store that has hair products and be like, hey, where are the hair products for women of color, for Black women? right? Because it's not like y'all can't use those hair products. You can. A lot of those hair products have a lot of nutrients because our hair is very fragile. So it actually ends up being super hydrated. I think there was a trend on TikTok a while back where, white women discovered this like oil that a lot of black women use and it like went out of stock, right? So it's not that these products aren't useful for you, but it's like if you have more products to choose from, just from an economics perspective, that drives down the cost of all hair products. So if there's fewer
Definitely.
products in the market and there's higher demand, those products are like those prices are skyrocketing. But if there's more products, then you're actually paying less to maintain your hair. And then the second thing I would say that's more on the local level is thinking about wealth, right? So I think a lot of times people don't realize how much power they have when they come together.
Mm.
And so in the States, and I would also imagine in the UK and in Europe in general, folks rent their apartments. I would argue that y'all should start forming tenant unions. Tenant unions allow you and your fellow tenants to come together to collectively bargain better living conditions. So if your landlord wants to go crazy and hike up the rent by $500, you guys can all come together and say, no, right? Like, we don't want you to do that. We will maybe accept a $100 hike, but we're not going to accept a $500 hike if we haven't seen a substantial improvement in our living conditions. And then at the state level, I think this really boils down to us really electing leaders that prioritize reducing the cost of childcare. Now, granted, in the European setting, like this is not as much of an issue in terms of like the state itself not providing care that's affordable. But you might think that you might need a nanny or a babysitter or other forms of childcare to help support the family. Those cost options are quite expensive. And so, again, having politicians and people who are pushing policies out there that help reduce or subsidize those costs can be really useful as well.
I think, why don't we talk about those national policies that we need to see, especially in America, to bring those costs down? And then we're going to talk about the individual differences each one of us can make.
Yes. So I think let's talk about childcare for a second. I'm a Head Start kid. I'm not sure if you're familiar with what Head Start is, but
Yeah.
Head Start, for those who are listening, is a program that is essentially for low-income working families. And it's actually something you apply for. So it's very competitive to get into. I actually didn't realize this until much later in life. But it's essentially like a pre-K program. It's provided, like, it's like a public offering of the government. Usually the state will receive funding, they'll distribute it to the counties, and the counties will erect these buildings that have these kids who are part of the Head Start program. So I was part of the Head Start program, and Head Start, I think, is one of the most incredible inventions ever. Like just offering public childcare options to families that really need it. Because I think what a lot of people don't realize is that it's very expensive to be poor. I want that to just sit with folks for a second. Like, I think a lot of people think that, like, poor people, folks who are low income, folks who are working class, like, they're just living a lavish life. And it's just like, no, right? You're having to stretch a cent, a dollar to maybe feed your kid, right? Or, you might not have to eat, or you might not be able to get health care. And so you're having to, like, really think through, like, if my kid gets an ear infection, this was me back in the day. I had like 3 or 4 ear infections. We didn't go to a doctor's office. We went to an emergency room. I later found out from my mom, we didn't have health insurance for a good chunk of time because my dad was still in school, my mom like wasn't working or whatever, and so it was just hard for us to get care. And so they had to be strategic about whether or not, certain visits made sense. Is there a way that we could wait a little bit, or like could I kind of like tough it out, or could they get some Robitussin? But these are sort of the trade-offs that are quite expensive for families. And so having things that alleviate those costs day to day can be such a game changer. And having public options for childcare, universal childcare, can really make a huge difference in a lot of families' lives. And we also know that these options are really good for society. They pay for themselves because they help build up citizens, quite frankly, that are educated, that are emotionally intelligent, and that can read and write and do like math and stuff. And these are things that we need from members of our society. So one thing I would say for sure is making sure we have more public options for childcare, making sure we have more funding for Head Start, which is such an amazing program that has made a huge difference in my life. You can call me patient zero. I think the other thing I'll say on top of sort of other topics that are addressed in the book is that one of my favorite chapters that is sort of a sleeper hit, is what I'll say, is the chapter about pennies and pensions. Is talking about retirement. And I spend like maybe a full page and a half talking about one solution, and that is Social Security. Please don't get rid of Social Security. It is keeping so many people alive and out of poverty. It's keeping so many women alive and out of poverty. Social Security, oftentimes for women of color, is the only source of income that they have coming in at the end of their life. And that's because they might be in jobs that didn't have retirement savings plans or pension options. And so the state really is stepping in and saying, "Hey, we don't want you to fall through the cracks." And you might be wondering, well, why we want to keep these women alive? Why we want to make sure these women are not impoverished? Turns out that older women, especially older Black women, tend to be taking care of their families. So it's not just that you're taking away income from this singular woman, you're taking away income from this economic ecosystem of a woman, quite frankly, right? So she is providing care and financial stability to maybe her grandchildren, her children's children, right? Like, or, her child, quite frankly, in some cases, extended family, that sort of thing. So entire support networks are supported through this policy that is Social Security, which is why I spend so much time talking about it and also citing that there's other countries that have done a great job of really dignifying the end of life, right? I think in the Netherlands they have now sort of like what do you call these things? But like multi-generational housing where they have
Yes.
incentives for young people to
Yeah.
live alongside older folks, and it keeps the older folks young, it keeps the young people wise, right? And it's a really sort of like holistic way of care on
Yeah.
both ends, I would
Yeah.
argue. And so these are types of policies that I would say are, at least on the caregiving front, that I think are really, really important. And then, of course, on the individual actions, advocating for, in terms of beauty, like products on your shelves, making sure that if you are a business owner that offers grants, that you're offering grants to folks who need it. We talked about how VC dollars are not going towards women, and they're definitely not going towards women of color, right? And then I would also say too, I think on the front of maybe career choice, that this platform right here, She Can, is an individual action that's being taken, right? An individual action being taken in community where you're showcasing different types of career paths that can encourage young women and girls to embrace different types of careers that they might have never considered. A lot of people think that I mapped out my whole career. I did not. This is very much like, I would say divine, if anything, but accidental at worst, where it's like I didn't know anything about economics when I was younger, had no clue what economists did. But the fact that I'm in this profession allows me now to be potentially a role model for somebody else, but also to introduce different ways where you can show up as an economist. I'm also simultaneously kind of redefining what economists even do, right? I'm a grad student with 2 books out.
Mm.
That's unheard of, right? But now somebody can look at me and say, I could put 3 books out. And I'd say, go ahead, girl. That's exactly right.
Anna, I love how you lead, and you are
Oh, thank
absolutely effervescent. And not only that, you have so much depth. And I love that you have come to this point where you are an economist, where you look at all this data, you do all the research, and you put it in words where people understand, because I think that's
you.
often a problem. We
Right,
have such overwhelming challenges to young people, definitely overwhelming, and they always think there's nothing I can do about it. And that is not true. Of course,
no,
we need changes in national policies. We do need paid family leave. We need maternity leave. We need health care for taxpayers. We need child tax credits, etc. And we
right,
know that when we invest in women, and we know that's a case all over the world, this is not an American issue or an African issue. When we invest
right,
in women, they give 97, 98, 90% back into their families. So that is a circle that works, and it's been working forever and ever. And when we don't put money into women, it has huge repercussions for families, for whole families, and not just for families, but for economies, because it means that this
Right.
person that is able to give back to the economy isn't doing it. So everything that you say makes so much sense, and you're underpinning it with your data and your facts. So, what do you feel every listener that is listening to this conversation can do to reduce this cost?
So I think that we've spoken through a lot of different actions that you can take, right? You can vote for political leaders that align with ways to reduce these costs. You yourself can advocate for these costs to be reduced. But also, you can be someone who like actually reduces your own costs as a woman, right? And so one thing I will encourage every woman and girl who's listening is that, one, when you are getting your first paycheck or even a paycheck, thinking about sort of promotions or whatever, that you're talking to other women about it. Because what you don't want is that one woman gets lowballed over here and one woman gets paid higher over here. That sort of disparity actually makes it worse off for all the women in the organization because,
Mm,
you know, what's the floor, right? If the floor can move, that means that maybe it moves for you in your favor in one instance, but doesn't move in your favor in another instance. So it's actually a really good idea to figure out what the collective floor is for all the women who are in the organization. And that kind of leads me into one thing that I would say. If there's a union opportunity at your job, please join your union, right? Because your union is really going to be central to those conversations about bargaining for the best possible deal when it comes to your benefits, when it comes to your pay, when it comes to your working conditions. And so making sure you're a part of a union also helps reduce that cost. We know that women who join unions, especially women of color, you get paid more, you get better benefits. So I think that it's really important and incumbent on us to do that. I would also say that I think that young girls should really be following platforms like She Can, right? Plugging into organizations maybe like the Sadie Collective, where you're getting exposed to different types of career paths. I always say that it's really important to know what you like, and it's also equally important to know what you don't like, right? And a lot of
absolutely.
times you can't really make that distinction if you don't know what's out there, right? So I always tell folks you got to touch grass. And sometimes touching grass means trying something new, but a lot of times people don't know what to try because they've never been exposed to something. So, the beautiful thing about the internet is that there's so many different communities at your fingertips. Follow an Instagram page that is introducing you to a variety of career paths. If you are interested in a particular career path, you can follow one that is more geared towards that and learn more about it. I want to just kind of put that power back in our own hands that, as much as we need to advocate and push for societal changes to reduce the cost when it comes to the double tax, we ourselves can also be at the center of reducing our own costs. And let me also maybe mention too on the motherhood front that I think there's a lot of mom guilt that takes place regardless of your race, regardless of your background, regardless of your class. And I think that one thing that we should be doing is mothers should be talking to each other in a way that's not toxic. What I mean by that is like being transparent about the struggles. Because I think a lot of times you go on these sort of like TikTok videos and people are performing motherhood in a very specific way. And what you're not seeing is that that mom that's behind the camera has two nannies on call, has a maid service, has people who are cleaning their house, a housekeeper, and then, maybe their parents live by. So they have this entire ecosystem of support and you're thinking she's doing it by herself. So I think that these conversations help break down sort of our own expectations of ourselves that are not really fair, but also allow us to be transparent with each other about how we're navigating not only motherhood, but the caregiving process in general.
Anna, yes, and I want to shout, yes. Oh my God,
Yes.
yes, absolutely. I want to get to you, Anna. There is a million more questions, and let's see if we get to them. But
Sure.
I want to talk about you. Tell us quickly, shortly, your pivotal points.
Sure.
We know that you came through Head Start. It's an amazing system. We have different
Thank
systems
you.
in different countries. Tell us how you feel you got to where you are today.
I would say that you kind of mentioned pivotal points, but maybe I'll outline this by doing something slightly different. I want to talk about my educators, if that's
Mm,
okay with you.
yeah.
My educators have marked different points of my life. So Head Start, I had my first set of educators there. But really, the educator that kind of set me on my path, I think, was my wonderful former principal, Miss Anna Puma, my namesake. So, from Head Start, I was selected as the only student in my class to be enrolled in a local private school in my county on full scholarship, which meant I was only the only black girl in my class. And I came from, my background, which was low income, working class, living in my affordable housing neighborhood. Very proud of it, right? Like I never felt like I was poor, so to speak. Very rich in culture and very rich in tradition and community. But it became clear when I entered that world that very much I was different from my students, my peers. They lived in cul-de-sacs and they had minivans and play sets, and my backyard was barely a backyard, right? And so I would say Miss Anna Puma really reminded me of the kind of path I could be on, the kind of path that I could lead if only I leaned into the types of skills that were being developed at a very young age, right? She was like, "You're a leader. You're very vocal. They call you very enthusiastic, but really what that means is that you command the rooms that you go into. And I really hope that you invest time in that." And she was someone who pulled me aside and did that. If we fast forward to sort of like my middle and high school years, I had another educator, Miss Banker, who was my homeroom teacher. And I think what she did was she really reminded me of my worth, right? I was in a much different environment where it wasn't that the kids changed per se, but they were richer. They were more privileged, right? And there was more obstacles to face socially in that environment. And I think she was somebody who grounded me in that environment and reminded me of the kind of potential that I had within myself. She also dared me to really embrace, some of the things that I say, right? So I'm very vocal. I like to get out there and call things out when I see it. And she never shied away from that. And she never told me to shy away from that as well. I'll go ahead and fast forward to, Dr. Jacqueline King, who really saw me during my college years where I was a mess. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was changing my major every other day. I had a lot of confusion. My parents were confused. I was confused. It was a mess. And she was somebody who gave me an opportunity to structure the process of finding my path. And it took a while, right? It took me about a year and a half. At that point, I was, I think, a junior or around my later semester of my sophomore year. And so I ended up staying an extra year in college to finally pursue math and economics at the undergraduate level. And that really does take me to my final mentor. I will say two mentors here: Dr. Judy Hellerstein, who was my first research mentor, who encouraged me to ask big questions when I was first entering the economics profession, and then Governor Lisa Cook, which is now a familiar name to many people, who is the first African American woman and woman of color to serve at the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She is one of my closest allies and friends and mentors in the economics profession. She was the first Black woman economist that I ever met, that PhD holding economist. And she's someone who I think has empowered me to own my space, own my place in the economics profession, right? So she has always told me, my writing, my advocacy, my research, and eventually when I got into my PhD program at Harvard, overjoyed, extremely proud, right? Mainly because she knew that once I got that PhD, it would cement all of this work I had done up until this point. And so those are the educators, I like to call them, they're my Mount Rushmore of educators that have really defined my life and defined the different pivotal moments in it as well.
Anna, I love that. What a fascinating way of going about your story. I love it. I'm so grateful you told it because this is really something for young girls. It doesn't
Yes,
matter where you're from, it doesn't matter what your background is. If you find those lights that shine the light on you, that back you up, that show you what you're able to do, you will find your way. And I've seen this again and
absolutely.
again and again and again over the last many decades of running programs for girls and women, that this is really each time someone finds a role model, people figure out their own path. And it's so powerful. Anna, so tell us a little bit, what will success look like for you? I'm following you on Instagram, or we are following you, of course. I love when you said the book came out and you said I was really feeling like a failure. I wasn't immediately on a bestseller list. And there is no doubt in my mind that you'll be on all the bestseller lists. But tell us a little bit what that success looks like for you.
Yes, it's something I've been trying to figure out myself, actually. I think at first I thought, when the book was kind of in its infancy, I was asked very early on, like, what's a goal of mine? And I think I'd said, I don't care if it ends up on a bestseller list at the time, right? But, I really want as many people to see it. I think that, the reality is you're human. So you're comparing yourself to other people. You're looking at how other people are defining success for you. And I think that I might have lost the plot a little bit, right? I initially said my goal was just for this book to get as far and as wide as possible, regardless of whether or not it lands on a bestseller list. And as I got closer to the book, I was like, well, I really think we all got on the bestseller list because of all the effort that we put in. So when we didn't debut, right? And for those who don't know the way book sales work, that first week included all the pre-orders and it
Mm.
included anybody else who purchased books that week. So you're maximizing your likelihood of being on the bestseller list that week. But of course, anything can happen between now and whenever this book, whenever I pass, right? And so it could be that I end up on, I don't know, The Daily Show or something and it goes viral. Like who knows, right? So and then the reality too is like Black History Month hasn't happened yet, Women History Month hasn't happened yet. So there's a lot of other opportunities in the near future for this book to maybe get some steam. But I think for me, success now is evolving. It's an evolving definition. I think for me at this present moment, it's very much are people reading the book at all? And it's been really encouraging to see holds at libraries. So I don't know if folks know this, but we go to a library and a book is super popular, they'll say it's on hold. There's a wait. And I'm hearing from across the country, there's a 7 week wait, there's a 6 week wait. Someone said it was a 4 month wait. And I think that's just really nice to hear
Yeah.
that this library kid got a library book that's on hold. People are in line to read it. And it's like very encouraging. And again, the book just came out. And I think what I'm trying to also do is give myself a bit of grace because I'm very hard on myself, as I think that post kind of indicated. But this book is reaching a lot of people right now, and there's more people who are going to be reached by the types of outlets that cover it and by the types of platforms like She Can that also amplify it. And so for me, success at the moment is people just picking up the book and reading it and feeling impacted and feeling empowered by the words on the page.
And we are your biggest champions, and we will be, and we're going to shout it from the
Oh, thank
rooftops. And we really, really are inspired by everything that you are and that you do, which is really important for us as, the whole of humankind, really, to have your voice out in the world. So,
you.
what makes you feel powerful?
Hmm, that's a good question. I don't know. I feel like my upbringing makes me feel powerful. Like
Mm,
where I came from, you
mm,
know? So I'm Ghanaian American, but I also feel like I have roots in like the Black community in America more generally.
yeah.
Um, I'm a woman, I was a little girl at one point in my life, my family, and then all the educators I mentioned and all those different experiences. I think all of that coming together to kind of create this beautiful tapestry that is my life
Mm,
at the present moment makes me feel really powerful, right? Like I've overcome things, I've championed things, and there's people who've stuck by me, there's people who've left, but they've all taught me really important lessons about the kind of human that I want to be. And
mm.
I think those moments collectively have like made me feel like, okay, I can I can stand up to bullies. I can do what I need to do. I've learned a lot of lessons along the way, and I think those moments kind of empower me to keep pushing forward. Yeah.
Anna, and what keeps you up at night?
Ah, so many things. Well, one. I sleep. So people don't think I sleep. I sleep deeply. Especially now since I'm on tour, I've been like super tired. But I think the same thing that keeps me up at night. I think it's sort of just thinking about the current and future state of our world. I know that's very cliche, but I think a lot about my nieces, my mentees, my younger friends. Just like, man, like, are we going to leave them with something better? I actually happen to believe that we will. I think we're going through a really difficult period right now, politically and economically, but I think we win at the end of the day. We'll win this thing at the end of the day. And I think that for me, putting a book like this out there, it might not be popular right now, maybe in the current zeitgeist, but there will be a time when people will pick this up and be like, hey, wait, we should start here. And I think that to me is enough of a reason to be like, okay, I think we'll be okay. But like for right now, it's the news cycle. The news cycle is keeping me up.
Anna, and it's very important for this insight that you're sharing in your book, but you're also sharing it very freely on our platform and many other platforms and on the
Yes.
media platforms where you turn up. And that's super important because you're chipping
Yeah.
away at massive issues, right? These are national
Right.
policy issues, and it's a chipping away. And as Desmond Tutu said, everyone is a drop in the wave of change. And
Mhm.
you're not just a drop, you're like a bigger piece of the wave already because you
Oh,
have used your brains and your heart and your purpose and bringing about change for people by giving them the facts and the storyline of what's real and what's not real, Anna. And we live in an age of misinformation, in an age of total disregard of facts and data and science, right? How do you feel?
mhm.
Can we keep on leading with facts? You're an economist, you're in Harvard. How do you feel that's, how are we going to lead with facts?
Yeah. I think we need to tell the truth and shame the devil, but we need to do it in a way that doesn't make people feel shame.
Yeah.
And I think that that is actually key. I was talking to somebody recently about this where I said, I think shame is effective at certain levels. If you
Mm.
want to shame a corporation, that's actually quite effective, right? Because that entity is not an individual and they have a lot bigger of a role to play in society. And so if it means that you have to add pressure and hold them accountable through sort of tactics that say, hey, what are you doing? And like, I'm thinking about Game of Thrones, like shame, shame. Like the masses collectively doing that can make a difference. But I think at the individual level, shame can lead someone to shut down. It's like Brene Brown's work, right? So
Yeah.
shame can lead
Yeah.
people to shut down. And so really what you want to do is call people in. And I think what
Mm.
I try my best to do in this book is lay out the facts, lay out the truth in a way where you don't leave feeling shameful if you have maybe been part of some aspect of these costs manifesting.
Yeah.
Right. And I imagine there's people who are obviously going to read this book and they clearly see themselves playing a bigger role in perpetuating these costs than others. But most people are going to say, wait a minute, that actually isn't fair. And I
Mm.
see why I might have maybe not contributed productively to that, but I can see now how I can correct that wrong. And so for me, I don't lie. I try not to lie, right? And this is something that is both a blessing and a curse because I have had to be tactful about when I, espouse the truth. But I do believe that the truth will set us free, regardless of timeline, right? Even if it doesn't set us free in this timeline, it will set my nieces free. And for that reason alone, I have to tell the truth. I have to be honest about what's going on. I have to put the facts in front of you. And I think for me, what I have kind of learned is that we're not all operating off of the same set of facts. Yes, there's misinformation, but then there are facts that are not widely distributed because
Mm.
people don't want you to know those types of truths. They
Definitely.
don't want you to know those types of stories, those narratives, those numbers, because it comes against maybe their priors or their worldview or their initial beliefs about certain things. So for me, I'm very much like, let me tell you this truth. It's not like a truth that I've conceived and concocted, but it's maybe a truth that you might have not been exposed to yet. And the hope is that it breeds empathy. I think that that's what I tell people at the very beginning of the book that you will have feelings of empathy if you're a human being with a heart that beats and a conscience,
Yeah.
because you'll read this book and realize, whoa, certain people have it way worse off than other people, and
Mm,
that's not fair. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, you would not want to be treated that way. And that's where empathy begins. Understanding that your your neighbor does not deserve the kind of vitriol they receive because of the kind of groups that they belong to. Because if the shoe was on the other foot, you wouldn't want that vitriol either. And so that's really what I'm dedicated to, telling the truth and shaming the devil as much as I can.
yeah, and you do it very well. Anna,
Thank you.
this triangle of access, money, and power, which is a
Yes.
triangle that every one of us has to look at, right? And some people have access from birth, and other people have access and they need to fight for it. How do you feel we can reframe it, looking a little bit at yourself and how you got access and how you are, working this triangle? That's, I think, something that every one of us needs to think about.
Yeah. And let me make sure I'm understanding the triangle. So you said access, power, and wealth.
Access, yeah, access, money, and power. I always think it's a very, this
Oh,
is a
sorry, money,
try.
power. Okay, got
Yeah, yeah. And
that.
it starts with access and it gets to money and it gets to power. And, when you are outside of this triangle, then we have to reframe this narrative that we've been telling everyone,
Yeah,
right? Because it's not working for large parts of humans in the world.
that's right. I think the issue here is like concentrated access, concentrated power, and concentrated wealth,
Mm,
right? Those things fundamentally aren't bad. It's the way that those things have come together to only benefit a few. I think for me, I look at the double taxes book as me sharing the wealth of knowledge and maybe even empowering people to seek out their own pathways of how they build wealth and build access and build collective power. I don't think that we should be relying on the benevolence of people with concentrated power, wealth, and access anymore.
exactly. Yeah.
I've believed that for a while, but I want to make it for the record. like I don't think that is how we get out of this mess.
I
I think
agree.
that the only way we get out is hand in hand together. Oh no, sorry about that. The only way we get out is hand in hand together, really thinking about how do we look out for our neighbors?
Mm,
Because if you look at the societies that have stood the test of time, right? The Mayans, right? And the indigenous folks of across the world, it is that neighborly concern, that community sort of power, shared power that has really allowed those communities to withstand all the changes that the earth has gone through in the last like 400 years. And so I think that there's a lot of people who think, well, if I get access, power, and wealth, I'll then distribute it. I also don't think that's a good strategy either, right? I know a lot of people, especially in the economic space and in the policy space, that talk a lot about, well, I'm going to go ahead and try to rise to the top. And then when I get to the top, I'll redistribute. And the reality is, like, unless you remain grounded in that community that raised you, that got you to where you are, you will forget that community ever existed because your choices and your incentives and the decisions that you'll make will be quite warped by that rise if it's left unchecked. And so ultimately, what I'll say is that community is really my frame of mind. If we're
mm.
not all winning, we're all losing. And so I don't think that somebody getting $1 million, even if they look like me, is necessarily a win if they're not finding ways to distribute that money back to the community.
Yeah. Anna, so tell us about your plans and goals. This book is out in the world. You're on your book tour.
Yeah.
You're meeting another She Can role model, Anna Malika Tubbs, I see in Los Angeles soon, which is very exciting. What
Right.
what what are you working towards?
It's a good question. A lot of people are asking me sort of what's next. I have to graduate. So I'm still a PhD student. For those who don't know, I'm still in school right now. So I think that for me, I'm finding that my role in society is this knowledge sharer. Like I really want to embrace what it means to be a public scholar, someone that the public can trust with the facts and with the truth. And I think part of that is putting out things like this where, I'm putting facts in your face in a way that's really digestible. I think another aspect of that is having like, signals that I am somebody who knows my stuff. So that's me getting the PhD. But then I think the other aspect of that is train the next generation to also think about these facts and to apply these facts in ways that are productive to society. And so I feel very called to be in the classroom. I think being a professor is part of my arc. I don't know if it's going to be the only thing that I do for the rest of my life, but it's definitely going to be part of my journey. I got to teach a class called the Economics of Social Policy last semester with my wonderful professor, Mark Shepard, and had a blast. It was so fun. And I actually ended up winning a couple teaching awards as a result. The students nominated for me award for saying that I was a great teacher for them. And so I feel very like, okay, this is like something I'm good at, but also something that I think we need. We need folks who are training the next generation of leaders to really think critically about how these facts and figures plug into our overall arc as a human race and as a society. And so I think that that's one aspect of it. I hope that I get an opportunity to write more books. I really want to write a children's book at some point. I think that kids are also the other frontier of individuals that we really need to sort of share these facts with. Kids are so bright and so intelligent and so wonderful. And they inspire me a lot. Like my niece Gigi and my niece Yaya are so smart. They're under the age of 5, and just them being excited about learning, and it's just like just being able to put stuff in front of them and expose them to how they can be better humans early on is something that I think can really fundamentally change the course of history itself. And so I feel like that is the role that I'm playing now. I'm young, so I'm 29. I know I'm not even 30 yet, but like this is what I want to do. This is the kind of work that I feel extremely called to do, to really engage the public in all these different facets of life to ensure that people have the information that they need to make decisions that make their lives better and hopefully society better by extension.
Anna, so what takeaways would you like our listeners to have from your story?
Oh, I think one thing I'd say is, people say believe in yourself, and I think that that is a very cliche thing to say, but I think you should though. I have a lot of like difficulty believing in myself. Like even the fact that I have a book out hasn't really hit me, if I'm being quite honest with you. Like I think it's just like even when people read back my bio, tomorrow I'll be on stage with Tim Walz's daughter, Governor Tim Walz's daughter, Hope Walz. Even the fact that I get to do that, like stuff is just like it hasn't. But I think you got to believe in yourself, and sometimes you got to fake it a little bit because if you don't believe in yourself, like you set I'll say it like this: you set the sort of expectation around how people should receive you. And I have realized that there are a lot of times when I do not believe in myself and I don't think that I'm hot stuff, right? I'm like, I'm just a girl. I'm just a girl from around the way. Don't worry about me. But when I come into spaces like this, I like really own the space, right? And I'm owning the space even though I have doubts that I'm carrying. But that sets the expectation of how people should treat me. And I think the other thing I would say too is that the golden rule is real. Treating people how you want to be treated is a real thing. I always tell young women and girls you should be kind because people will always remember how you made them feel,
Mm.
right? Not what you did, not kind of accolades you brought to the table, but how you make them feel. So a lot of times, I'm my tour stops. People are always shocked that I'll stay an hour and a half behind just to sign books and hug people. But then those same people will then go on LinkedIn and be like, I met Anna. She was so amazing, right? And I'm not doing that so I can get that post, but I realize that how I treat people is actually really important. It's actually the kind of the whole thing
Yeah.
because people can't really champion folks that they don't like and that they don't believe in. And a lot of times that boils down to what was the lasting impression you left on them the last time they spoke to you? And so I'm not saying that you have to be kind all the time in the sense of like there are days when you're gonna be like really snappy. Like I'm realizing I'm kind of snappy today. I'm in a mood, and I'm like, okay, I need to pull it back, right? But I think on average, across the board, you should just be a kind human. A lot of times people are going through things, and I think that this book really taught me to reflect on there's a lot of people going through a lot of different phases of life, oftentimes simultaneously, that have these costs that are obviously weighing on their pocketbooks, but also probably weighing on their minds and on their hearts. And the least I can do is meet them halfway by being a decent human being, a good human being that treats them with respect and dignity.
Anna, yes, and oh my gosh, I am so grateful to you for
Thank
speaking on She
you.
Can, for leading so powerfully by example, for bringing this book into the world, for all the work that you do. I love that you want to be a wealth of knowledge, that you're sharing your knowledge in such interesting, inspiring, and straightforward ways where people can understand. Everyone can understand. Everyone can read
Yeah,
this book and everyone can understand this book. And you have solutions at the end of every chapter. It's really powerful. I love that you want to
thank
be a
you.
public scholar, that you want to be a professor, your commitment to the next generations, your commitment to truth, how you feel and how you read the facts and data that you research. And yeah, thank you for caring. Thank you for daring. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you so, so much. I'm so grateful for the platform, and I hope that we remain in contact and in connected, especially with all the folks who are going to be tuning in.
Definitely.